So today I'm going to be talking with Vanxi, and I think, is that how it's pronounced?
I've heard. I don't really care about my pronunciation.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. And, yeah, it's going to be kind of interesting. You reached out to me after the TF2 post, and you have a lot of perspective to give, I imagine, on just sort of 6v6, the initial transition from ESC to RGL, and then a bit on ESC itself. Do you want to introduce yourself for a little bit? Talk about yourself?
So, I'm Vanxi. I've been technically around for a little bit. I tried to play open like ESCA season 23, but my team died. But then I tried again around like season 28, and I've basically like been playing off and on since then.
Okay. So how did you get into Team Fortress 2 on a casual level?
Honestly, it was in like elementary school. My friends were talking about this game called Team Fortress 2, and I thought at the time I thought nothing of it. But then I used to be a chat room frequenter at the time, and some other friends there were talking about the game, so I was like, I gotta check it out at least. But my laptop didn't really support it at the time, but whenever I actually did get a PC, I ended up like an actual good PC. I started just playing Tf2, and that's where I am right now.
And what class did you start out on?
Ironically enough, like whenever I first joined my first multiplayer TF2 game, I was super scared of like being trash, so I just like played medic and just only healed a heavy for like Thunder Mountain pub.
Man, you should have gone into Highlander.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did that transfer over into playing ESCA initially? Like, what was the experience, like, sort of getting into it?
So I think around like 2,000 hours in, I've been like an idol. I was like an idol community, like part of an idol community and stuff that used to be a little bit on the small time stuff. And my friends at the time were like talking about like competitive stuff, like, oh, you see Clockwork, oh, you see Banny, and I was like, who are these people? So I just looked up a couple of like matches and stuff, and I was like amazed at like the pinnacle of skill, because at the time I was like the try hard pub star at the time, you know.
Yeah.
So I just decided, why don't I just like, I want to do this stuff too. It seems pretty cool, and it's funny, like people always trash on me for it. That's whenever I started. I used to be like a combat NG man.
Uncle Dan.
Yeah, I used to love watching Uncle Dan. But back I watched like a Sin like frag movie, like, you know, SIN.
Not familiar with them
Like
personally, no.
like he's like a old TF2 YouTuber.
Oh, Nissel.
Basically,
Yeah.
Missile. So basically, I watched like the Pipe Frag movie, and I was just absolutely amazed at how fucking cool Demo Man looked. And I was like, yo, I want to get better at this class. Then I chose Demo Man as my first sixes main, and just started grinding in like MT and like pubs and stuff.
Okay. And is that something you've kind of continued going on, or like what sort of classes have you been playing for most of your sixes career?
Honestly, I started out as a demo main, but then like I like try to play UGC Steel with a couple of friends and some random people like get together. The team did not fare well, and I was constantly frustrated with the fact that I could only do so much from demo man. Honestly, I kind of regret the fact that I switched to mains from demo to soldier, because at the time it was like easier to find people to MTE against because people don't like playing demo man. And also, I felt like I could do more from Soldier. So that's why I made the initial switch. But I kind of regret it because I don't really feel like grinding out Demo Man now. But Demo Man's pretty fun to play in my opinion now.
And what do you play for 6v6 now? Like, is it a Demo Man Soldier Medic?
I exclusively play Soldier, basically.
Pocket or Rimmer?
Oh, I can play in. I'm more well known for my pocket, but I can play either.
Okay. I respect it. Get you a man that can do both, you know?
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the new player like in ESCA back then? Like, how would you go about finding a team? Were there, like, Discords? Probably not back then, right? Forums? Like,
It was like it's basically the same process as it was like nowadays. Like on TFTV, you just post a LFT and stuff, and just like you just get tries out and stuff, and basically just like get on the team the same process.
okay.
I will say that like both of my ESCA teams I never really had to try out for. It was like I just got invited to join them, or like the first team I got invited to, the second team I made.
And would you say just being directly invited to teams, like, would you classify that as a bit of a red flag when it comes to leadership?
I wouldn't say that. It's just like it can be, but like you have to like that's not like the main indicator. I would say that you just have to like I wouldn't say that there's that the main indicator there. Like sometimes people just like invite you to team just because like they really liked playing with you, which is what happened that season.
I see. Okay. Do you think people were like more kind of passionate or just willing to play the game for the sake of it back then?
I definitely feel like the passion is like the same basically, at least like around the lower levels to like advanced levels. There are like people who like play this game like and this is like the only thing they do all day. But there are like probably less of those types of people that are in Invite right now.
I see. I see. How about TFTV? You mentioned that, right?
Yeah.
What was it like back then? Is it sort of like a lot of the same of what it is now, or has it sort of like evolved since then?
Uh Less funny shit posts. More drama, well, more weird drama threads.
Hmm.
Honestly, I never really partook in like the whole like ESCA open thread stuff. But like I think there was like the recent RGL happenings thread that made me like get a glimpse of like what it probably would have been like. I don't know. Stuff like that genuinely happens like a lot less. I think that it's kind of evolved in the fact that there's less drama being publicized and stuff like that. But if
Right.
you're a type of person that like likes reading that stuff on your board, then I guess it's a downgrade.
Okay. So, what would you describe TFTV culture as? I feel like it's the sort of thing that gets like thrown a lot as a thing. Like, oh, it's just like you get downvoted for anything.
I describe TFTV culture as like a giant, a like circle jerk a bit, honestly, because there are some people that kind of just get hated upon just for posting just because like something they did like a while back that like 10 people don't still don't like them for. And then there's like I think the most recent example that I can remember of like the TFTV hive mind not really doing what they're supposed to was the Sin Karma thread where High Five posted that clip of Sin Karma doing something sus, and basically the TFTV High Find decided, oh, that was sus. Well, what about these 10,000 clips that were also sus? But the thing is that like until you can prove that like those like it's kind of like devil's advocate. Like although it has a low chance of happening, it can still theoretically happen if he's just that good, you know. So
Right.
nothing really ever happened off of that thread after like the initial 10 posts.
So, you don't think that like when people are like TFTV is a high mind, you don't think that that's like an unfair thing to say necessarily?
I definitely don't. There are like a lot of people who like occasionally you'll have like those intelligent posters who like say smart stuff, but then like there's the But then there are like the weird things that just get upvoted just because like this guy just has the friend group set up, you know?
Right. Like, it's a lot easier to make it seem like you know what something is than to actually know what something is like when you make a post.
Yeah. Something I also say is like it's kind of like the sports data effect. I know this used to happen a lot back when TFTV was more active in casting games. I call it the TFTV invite team, where there'll just be like a lot of players heckling like the invite players currently playing in the match, and it's like they're talking as if they're like the top invite team.
How would the TFTV team do you think?
Probably go 0-32.
Oh, you got it, Owen?
Yeah, they probably wouldn't do too well in the invite.
Okay. So what if TFTV made their own... What if they made their own league?
TFTV.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of trying to be made. Like back when the whole schism was happening, whenever ESA announced that it was discontinuing services, I believe that there was gonna be like not NACL or not TFCL, but like something similar to ETF2L, where it was just gonna be like, I think like Twiku was organizing that, but the main reason why that didn't gain traction was just because there simply wasn't a prize pool, and Froyo was not going to. Benny decided that the league with a prize pool is going to be the league that we play in, so that's where we are now.
And do you think the prize pool matters that much? Like, all, like, I don't know, $70 you might make from one season?
Um, Honestly, it's kind of just like the competition rather than like when there's a prize pool, there's going to be competition.
So it's like about the sentiment kind of more than like the prize pool itself.
Well, yeah, the prize pool just attracts like those people who just want to be competitive, I'd say. Like, I know that in like the first 3 seasons of RGL, like the first 2 seasons of RGL, it was really fucking rough for Invite because there weren't like, I think there was like many seasons between like there's like 3 seasons in between like season 1 and season 5 or 6 or whatever, where there were literally like 4 or 5, like 6 or 5 teams in Invite, which is like never really what I feel like you never really saw that much in ESEA. Like, of course, like teams might have died more near the end, but in ESEA, that kind of like happened more towards like the latter end of the season, I'd say. Whereas like they started out the season with like 6 teams in RGL.
Right, right. So it's like a bit of a rocky start from the get-go, yeah.
Yeah, but now Invite is thriving. It just took a little time. Well, I wouldn't say thriving per se, but like it's definitely in much better shape than it used to be whenever it was first starting.
Okay. I think that's a topic we could get back to later. So, do you think you would see people playing if there was like a $6 prize pool, $1 per player? Does that foster the competition?
Honestly, it's just like Froyo determines basically what league they get to play in. Like, I bet that if like Froyo had decided to go into like who is the Sidular League, the TFCL,
Yeah, TFC.
people probably would have like went to that league instead of RGL, just because like they're kind of just following best team in North America.
Hive mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's kind of like if you just decided not playing the same league as Froyo, it's like as a community, it's kind of just gonna feel like it would bring. At that point, sixes would definitely just be dead, because you're just gonna be nothing to really reach for, I'd say.
Right. Okay. Do you think Furiotech has done like a good job at guiding the community to like the best leagues per se?
I don't really know. I wouldn't really say that. Like, obviously, like RGL has its like benefits, but RGL definitely has its disadvantages. Particularly, I say that just because it seems like the admin team just is like so far apart from like the general player base, like disconnected. I would say
How do you
that's the
mean?
main. It's kind of like they don't really know what decisions people would actually like. You know, they like they don't like try to ease anyone into it at all. It's like I think an example of this whenever like they first added a villa, and that was a change that like probably only like not a lot of people liked a villa in exchange for granary. I will say because I think like the only one of the only guaranteed people who liked it was literally just Banny, just because he was all about the proponent of like trying out new maps, getting rid of these old and outdated maps, and stuff like that. I think Villa got added because of like the map pool cup right before that season started, and there was like a poll going around about how willing you'd be to play the map, and I think no one really voted to like. I think no one really voted to have Villa in the map pool, but it ended up happening anyways, just because like they took Granary not being a well liked map as hey, let's just remove this entirely and try and get in Villa this new map.
Do you have a map in mind that you think would have been like a better replacement at the time?
Definitely like Reckoner. Like I don't. It's so confusing to me that only recently has RGL considered even adding Reckoner because it's already a map that's very commonly played in like ETF2L.
Right, right.
But like, it's not like a process. Like, cause like the issue you'll see with like a lot of like new map makers, I'd say, is that they try to make their maps too much like process or like a very scout oriented map. That was like I wouldn't say that was the main problem with Villa. Villa was just like not a good map.
Right.
But I definitely say that I think it was like propaganda. Propaganda just felt like it was such a huge map, and Villa also had the same thing where it's like there was so much distance to cover all the time. Like both were never really well received by the community, I'd say.
Okay. Do you think it's the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, they're just like looking at the success of other maps, trying to replicate what's already worked, instead of like trying to find their own identity and using their own vision for the maps?
I definitely think that there are times to do that where you can like be like, hey, this thing worked out on this map quite well. You can not necessarily copy and paste, but take inspiration. But it just feels like most of the implementation of like these maps was just sloppy, and you know, like it doesn't really feel like it has any cohesiveness. Like, it feels like I'm playing like 3 different maps all at once every time I go into like a certain like the CP Chad map.
So there's like a bit of a lack of focus from the map makers there, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say that there's like a lack of really vision, I'd say.
Yeah, so that's like some definite advice I think you could be seeing, like, be given to the map makers over it, yeah. Okay. Do you think it's like, has RGL kind of always had this issue, where it's like they do things kind of for the people instead of with the people for the sounds of it, and then they take somebody like Banny as the representative of the people that they're doing things for?
I'd definitely say it's like a lot like that, cause like I know for a fact that no one like the Cow Mingler is like probably one of the hottest debated weapons of all time. I'm personally against its ban just because of like how like low risk or like high reward it is in certain scenarios. But other people will argue different. I'm not really here to argue the debate. I'm just here to say the Cow Mingler is probably like the hottest debated weapon of all time in terms of like whether it should be added or not. Like there are still people who are like saying stuff like that, like they want the Cow Mingler back. Even though it's not every time it's gotten unbanned in like ESCA, and people have like not really been that happy as a general consensus.
What sort
But
of
then they're
effect?
like,
Sorry.
oh, can you? You can go ahead.
No, you go on. You go on.
I was gonna say that people seem to like people complain about like Howlinger a lot more whenever it was like in play, which would make sense. It does have some pretty like stupid moments, you know.
What sort of effects does it have on the play? Like, what's the main reasoning for the concern?
I just feel like the whole it would be fine honestly if it didn't have the charge shot. Like you can make the whole argument where it's like, oh, why are you scared of like a soldier with no rockets type thing. I'd say it kind of falls under like the same thing as like the market gardener, where it's like someone who's good enough at it. If they're good enough at it, there's like sometimes it's gonna be those scenarios where it's like, oh, we just can't do anything there except like, you know, like I feel like the charge shot. If you're like playing, if you know how to use it well, there are definitely going to be a lot of like low risk, high reward things that you can accomplish with that weapon.
Right. But it's the sort of thing where it's like, where if one should be banned, the other should be too, in that sense?
I'd say that Market Gardener is a lot more high risk, just because of the fact that like you have to be really good to properly utilize that weapon first. I'd say.
Right. Okay. Do you think there could be like any potential solution? Like, let's say, like, I don't know, like a plugin to disable the charge shot or something? If so, like, what do you think could sort of further help balance the weapon out?
Uh,
For competitive.
for me personally, I'm a bit weird. I don't really like the whole using plugins to balance weapons thing in sixes. It just feels weird. Cause like again, you have to like think about. It sounds. You have to like think about those people who are like coming first and coming into like competitive. They're just gonna be like confused about like why this like they already like confused about why certain items are like banned and stuff. So they'd
Right.
probably also be even more confused if like we just started like balancing weapons on by ourselves. Like I feel like that creates like a dangerous precedent.
That's definitely fair. So, would your suggestion be to just like keep the weapon unbanned?
I'd say to keep the weapon banned for the cow mangler, just because no one's really been happy every time it's been unbanned. Whereas like Market Gardener's like really hit or miss. The only people who are like really mad about that weapon are like people who are playing in like the higher divs and have to play against people like Jay or Soapy.
What's the scariest thing you've seen happen with the cow mangler in sixes?
I mean, one time I think it was like we're pushing out grass side on product. I think it was red side. Yeah, it was red side. And this guy was like on their cliff. He called it. He was charge shotting our grass as soon as he saw us, and I just said charge shot while my medic was taking it. My medic like kept walking forward and like ate the charge shot and instantly died, and then got mad at me for not saying where the charge shot was going, even though like why would I call the charge shot like why would I call for a charge shot like that if it was going somewhere else other than where we're currently going?
Pretty scary stuff, huh?
Yeah.
How about a charge shot above the goalie's second doorway? Is that sleeper tech right there?
I don't think it's really a sleeper tech because like the whole thing with the Calmlinger is that say like I feel like it's a better example would be like holding Snakewater second. If you get like that early spot on where they're trying to go, if you like time it just right, you can like do really good damage. But even if you don't do good damage, the whole fact that you're having a charge shot go near that doorway that the enemies you're trying to push just stalls them.
Right.
Like as it has the same effect as like a trap does, you know. But like a lot less. But it's like you don't have to really set it up. You just have to like react to what's actually going on, which is like at least with traps you have to like kind of like anticipate where they're trying to go.
Right. But then it's just like with the cow mangler, you literally just go wherever, yeah.
As long as you like have a sightline onto like the door that you have and you know that they're gonna push that door, it's like you can definitely like if you don't do damage to the charge, you're definitely going to like stop them from walking forward. You know.
Right. Okay. And is there any like downside to using Cow Mangler when it's unbanned?
The main downside is honestly just the fact that you can't destroy sentries that easily, and
Right.
like I mean, you could do like some weird stacking tech where it's like you get like a one guy to charge shot the gun, and another like a 2-man to go forward after that. But like I feel like that hasn't really been experimented with that much to really say, and I wouldn't really unban the weapon just to find out if you could do that, you know?
Right. Well, there's no Wrangler in 6s, right? Like, it's banned.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't think there's really much of a niche for that to begin with. Okay. So, that was a pretty interesting tangent. Always love to end up going on those. You got any other controversial, like, weapon takes or just, like, interesting stuff on that matter before we move on?
I'd just say that, like, Market Guard, I feel like Market Gardener's, like, it's shitty to deal with, but I feel like it's kind of just the same as dealing. It's similar to, like, Sniper, where it's like, damn, this guy's just hitting all his shots, and there's nothing you can do about that stuff, you know? I feel like it's like, it allows Soldier to have a higher mechanical skill ceiling, but at the cost of, like, people's enjoy, like, ability to fight back to it, you know?
Right. But then if done poorly, it kind of just leaves you in, like, a really bad position as well, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. I definitely think that's fair, yeah. It's nice to have some, like, sort of dynamics like that, I'd say, to help people define themselves.
I definitely think as like spectating, seeing someone use their market guard and like rolling somebody is like a lot. It's a lot. It seems like a lot hype. Like it definitely like helps connect like that pubber crowd
Right.
to 6s because like obviously that's like something that it's really only been popularized like in past 2 years, but it's always been seen as the meme weapon. So whenever people see the meme weapon owning, wow, that's so amazing, you know. Like,
Jay's rolling with the spoon.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you think that aspect of just being able to connect to pubbers is like a vital part of competitive, like with the cast to just draw new people in?
I mean, you always have to like be able to draw new people in, or otherwise the game will be at a slight decay.
Right. Do you think that's something that's like done well currently? Like, do you think it's in a healthy state in that regard, or do you think it's seen like better days when it comes to just the ultimate effectiveness of getting new players in?
I mean, like I said, it's like RGL is a lot more accessible than ESEA used to be. And, like ESEA had like all these archaic like things they had to learn how to use and stuff, whereas like RGL is a lot more modernized.
Right.
And like the lower skill levels are definitely a lot more like better for a player's learning curve. Like basically how ESEA worked, it was like it just dropped you in like a giant league of like a lot of teams and just was like trial by fire.
Right.
Whereas like RGL gives you more of like an actual progression in that regard up to like the advanced level.
Right. Okay. Like it's a lot less jarring. Yeah. More
Yeah.
consistent. That's definitely good to hear. Yeah. Okay. Do you usually feel like you're able to trust the RGL admins even if like they end up not necessarily deciding based off of the community as a whole?
It really depends on which admin we're talking about. If it's like someone like Jamond, I know that he's making like the best decisions that he knows how to make them, but like with other people it's more like with other people it's just weird. Cause like there's some weird RGL policies. Like take for example, well there's like just weird like modern adminship policies in general. Like take how the TFTV chat copy pasta is handled nowadays, you know? I don't think you're really allowed to like post many copy pastas in like most Twitch streams of TF2 that are like casting a game, you know?
Right.
Which I honestly view as like dumb and just something to like restrict like player expression itself. And you can like meme on me all you want, but it's basically like the same as like having those dumb football chants while you're like in person at the stadium, you know? That's like basically what the copy pastas were. But now like I don't really think you can have like really intelligent conversations in like you're not expected to have like intelligent conversations with people in that chat, in my opinion. Just because
Right.
of like there's already like so many people in that chat, it's gonna be hard to like actually hold a conversation there.
Yeah, like I'm
So
sure if you really cared about discussing it, you'd do like a small chat with friends on the side about it.
yeah, that's exactly what I think about it. Whereas I just feel like certain people, like I don't know exactly who, but I just feel like it's kind of just like they like the control that they have whenever it comes to stuff like that. And I'm not really gonna name names because I don't even know any names, but like
The Shadow Council.
that's just what I feel like because I don't think that that really has harmed anybody.
Right. Do you think it's like, do you think RGL doesn't feel like they can fully trust the community? Do you think maybe that's why it could be?
I mean, the fact that they don't let us have team profile pictures says a lot about that.
Yeah. And then do you think maybe just like the lack of trust, like that RGL gives the community, results in the community giving RGL a lack of trust and response? Yeah.
I feel like RGL already kind of started out as the kind of meme "I hate this league" thing, where it's just because of the fact that they banned Froyo from like playing sevens before they started implementing sixes, so they already had like a negative view in the public eye. And there's also that incident where I think it was Pete or whoever he goes by, Knuckles or Pete, that invite scout. He exposed like the spy cheat thing,
Right, the spy scripting thing.
and then he got banned for exposing that. So already coming into like sixes and stuff, they didn't really have too big of a reputation, and then they started doing other stuff that like kind of made them not well liked in the public eye.
Okay. What do you think RGL could do to kind of like repair that image and trust?
Honestly, just try and be more transparent, I'd say, because you almost like never really hear much about what they're actually doing. You just know that they're doing something. I think that if they just try working on like more transparency and like more positive like PR things, like everything's just fixed with time. Like people, if they keep on going on a route where it's like I haven't really seen like a monthly RGL for it in a while, so it's like say like if the game's still up and running like 2 or 3 years from now, and nothing, and RGL doesn't really do anything to lose the trust of people, it's gonna just be like, wow, remember when RGL did this stuff, and it was like, wow, that was funny.
Right.
And but like, there's gonna be like a lot. At that point, it'll just be more like meme threads and like genuine grievance, you know.
So, are you think RGL's like trying to looking at like a status quo here? Do you think that's their play?
I definitely think that with how much they got like hammered in like their first 1 or 2 years of operation, I definitely think that everything they're definitely trying to improve for the better. But there's still some like issues, I'd say.
Right. And do you think it's just like misrepresenting the community's desires is what's preventing them from really changing for the better? Like just listening to a few, like too few people, kind of.
Yeah, I think they've gotten better about it lately, but it was like I think there was like that also weird thing where people got actually I forgot what I was about to say, but I know that there was like a certain poll. I think there was like a certain poll where like not really people. Oh yeah, so I just remembered about like the villa thing. So the reason they kept it in the map pool was just because like the season for like so long was just like they kept like the season 3 or like season whatever thing. They just like kept referring back to the poll and being like, well, this poll from 2 or 3 seasons ago determines the fact that Villa should stay in the map pool. and we're not going to say no otherwise. And it took like a whole 3 seasons of that for them to finally consider taking Villa out of the map.
Yeah, so it sounds like RGL just kind of relies on like a few things, like either the past or like one person or group to kind of over-represent their policy.
Yeah, that's what they've done in the past so far.
And is that something you still see in the present, like with the current admin team?
Honestly, I wouldn't say I'm like too active.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
and like in terms of like keeping up with that stuff nowadays, but I usually am able to like see whenever stuff like that happens and stuff. Like just whenever I'm like occasionally checking, and I haven't really seen any like egregious like RGL threads lately, and like where they like did something. There was like that weird thread where it's like amateur, like these amateur players basically sandbagging when the div they weren't supposed to be in, and they had like a staff member on their team. I don't have enough context on that to really make a proper judgment on it.
Okay. How about the recent payment thread? Just talk about like how some people haven't paid yet, and then the TV community like going up in arms, and then like somebody literally just asking an RGL admin and getting an answer and putting it there. Is that something that you like are familiar with at all?
Oh, the Cherish thread?
Yeah.
I like just heard of that, but honestly, there have been times where I just straight up have not like there have been times where like I just straight up have not been paid for like stuff until like a whole 2 seasons after. Or like it'll be like the middle of like the second season after and stuff, and I'll just be like, oh, here's a $20 that I spent like 2 seasons ago. Thanks. Like they definitely. I honestly don't really expect much money out of it, just because I've never really been. I play for fun mostly. I don't really play for a prize pool, which is like what a lot of people can say. But in that case, it's like there was monetary compensation promised, so I do think that it's a valid point to just raise concerns about like where the money actually is. You know?
Right. Okay. Yeah, so it's like kind of rooted in the past, not all about just this one case, yeah?
Yeah, it's definitely been an issue. This thread is basically just like brings it up. But I don't think that infamously a lot of teams have never really gotten paid in a timely manner. You know?
But do you think it's unreasonable for them to be going like RGL is stealing? Or do you think that is somewhat reasonable given the context?
I mean, again, there's like not really much transparency about that. Like if they had simply said, "Hey, we'll get your payment to you in like 1 or 2 seasons or something," then I guarantee that trend probably wouldn't have happened like by a certain date.
And then it's just like
it's like they're kind of completely silent about that aspect, and now like fears like what you're saying there is like, are they stealing on my money? And those are completely valid to have just because there's zero transparency.
Right, so they're like expecting people to come to them to ask them kind of to like to get the answer, yeah?
Well, I don't really say that they don't. I'd say they don't really have an answer to that. I'd say that like they don't really have a protocol for it set yet.
Right, so it's just like you see people who like aren't even like involved with the finances have to kind of step in and taking the blame for it and having to try and like make that transparency for them.
Yeah, it's like the thing. Like RGL has always had to kind of play like a catch-up game, where it's like they'll do something like bad that people don't like. TFTV post gets made, and then they have to go around and like reverse the decision that was made. Or it's like it's just really inefficient, just like as an organization to keep constantly doing that. You know?
Right, like you don't solve issues if you're reactive. I'd say like
yeah,
you just
you want to like the best. I'd say like the best like organizational. The best organizations can always like be proactive about certain issues to make sure like stuff like this just doesn't happen.
Right.
Obviously it's like TFT like TF2. You can't really expect like the best because most of these guys are like straight up just volunteers who just are passionate about the game.
Right.
But again, it's like I think a while ago Patty made this distinction where it's like you're allowed to criticize people in order to like make them feel, like try and improve the quality that you're of service that you're trying to get. It's like he made this example of like these theoretically like criticizing like a TFTV, like a caster or like a video, whoever, like I don't remember what the people, like the cameraman, and the cameraman comes back with, "Hey man, I like do this completely off my own time. I like I don't have to do this if I don't want to," and stuff like that. And it's like I feel like that's totally reasonable to be able to like constructively criticize like stuff like that. That's
Right.
basically the whole thing that I'm getting at here. Constructive criticism is a gift. But it seems that like obviously in TF2 not all criticism is necessarily going to be constructive, but I definitely feel like there's been enough criticism already that RGL should be able to be in a better place than they are now.
Right, like they've been given the right tools, yeah, they have the awareness. Do you think maybe it's just like sometimes when they do try and genuinely like make decisions, they just get so much backlash and then have to reactively go back to it that maybe they get scared out of making change in general?
I definitely say that's like a factor.
Okay.
Like definitely a factor.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. I feel like another part of it is just like when you get so much criticism like that, it becomes so easy to just kind of shut it all out and have none of it resonate, right? Because it's like so hard to differentiate between what's like genuine, well-intended, constructive, and what's just like outrage, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's
Like there's always gonna be like reactives, like in any community whenever change
Right.
happens.
But then it's like
But-
you don't want your league to be reactive as well.
Yeah.
No, that definitely makes sense. Yeah, like I think if you put it into that context, yeah, like most of the community is reactive, including I guess the volunteers to that extent. Yeah, it's just like different sides of the same coin in a way.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you think we could kind of do to like change that at a fundamental community-based level?
I mean, that'll be like preaching to the choir, I'd say, because many people like. I'm not gonna say all people, but some people just come here to just like chill and relax, or they've like had like a bad day or like a bad week or a bad year, and they're not really here to like really necessarily make the community better. They're really only here for self enjoyment, which I wouldn't say is a bad thing to want at all. It's just like I think that really the change would have to come from like RGL itself, you know? Like many people like the Banny config, that's probably like basically the people who need to make changes, like the people who are in a position to make changes is like
Right.
RGL.
Okay.
Like the community can't really do much. They can only be like, hey, we don't like this, or like, hey, we don't like that. You know, that's all we can really say.
So let's say RGL does sort of start it to like sort of change. What's the best thing the community can kind of like change or try to do to support as well in that case?
I mean, just to not be scared of it, I guess. Like, I remember people were talking about how the Banny config was a bit of a meme, but then we had a whole LAN played out on it, and it was probably one of the most entertaining LANs for like a while, just because of the fact that there wasn't really. I know that the thing about like those high stakes matches is that people constantly complain about the stalemates and how neither team really wants to do anything, just because like lower bracket finals, whichever team loses just loses, you know?
Right.
Whereas like that banning config forced teams to really not really take the safe approach and just had to like, if you don't do this in 3 minutes, then you're just gonna get reset back to mid and possibly lose the game that way, you know? It incentivized fast-paced gameplay and risk taking.
Okay. So, do you think it could be possible for just the kind of the QE be improved, like kind of caring about it and self-interest kind of like intertwining? Like, do you think they necessarily have to be exclusive when it comes to the goals?
I think that they're they're exclusive. I don't think they're necessarily exclusive, but it's like they're definitely not on the same spectrum. Like you can like want to do something for your own self-interest that also benefits, you know. Like they're
Right. Okay.
definitely not like two sides of the same coin. You can like have both of them exist and have like one or two of them exist at the same time.
Why don't you think it's found more often then?
Honestly, it's just a lot of people. Stuff like that usually just isn't stuff that people really enjoy doing. I'd say there are a lot less people like in the sixes community who like do like service work than there are people who actually play the game. Just because they like simply just don't like doing that kind of stuff, you know.
Right, and then it's like I'd say it's like really easy to get burned out if you do genuinely care. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any actually, so let's loop back around for a bit. Yeah, I think that covers a lot more of the abstract stuff. Do you want to talk about more about your own experiences now with RGL? Yeah.
Um,
Like
I've never really. My opinion on RGL has kind of been more on like the negative side, but not like the whole I hate RGL and everything they do type thing. It's more like kind of just like negative in like a critical way.
Right.
Definitely think that Klee could be better in certain aspects, and I also have had stuff happen to me that the league actually had happen. I think season 3 I was playing on a Div 2 team called Beast Mode, and basically the whole outrage there was that Shining Star, who was a very well accomplished like top IM scout in the past, was allowed to play their main in that division on Cat Posse, and she single-handedly turned that team from like a low Div 2 team to like a high like game like grand finals playing team, you know.
Right.
And that was like the whole outrage there, and they kind of just had to let it slide just because the admins were like, oh, we Shining Stars playing scout in this match and we forgot to restrict. Dang. Well, I guess you're just gonna keep playing their class because I doubt that they can. Because we doubt that we can really. And they're gonna be able to carry their team that much, you know.
Right.
And then lo and behold, they did carry their team that much. I will say those players on that team ended up becoming a lot better down the line, but I'd say their season 3 success mainly just involved like Shining Star on like their main. Like
Right. Okay.
um RGL never really had any issues with them besides that. I remember being really discontent about that whenever it happened. Just because it felt like I'd been really. I feel like everyone felt like they've been cooked out of out of like Div 2, like all the playoff Div. Because that was like Div 2 and Div 1. Div 2 was like more like the lower half of like advanced now, and then Shining Star was like very clear like a Div 1 would like be top 3 in Div 1, let alone Div 2. You know.
Right. How do you feel about Div 1 and Div 2 being split back? Like, advanced, rather, being split into two? Do you think that was, like, a good call at the time? Do you think it's something that was initially a good call, but that was done for, like, a season or so too long?
I think that for the player volume that existed back then, it was a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Like, obviously, we don't have as many numbers as when a COVID initially hit, so there's just gonna be like less people now, so I have to consolidate back into advanced. But I definitely feel like Div 1 and Div 2 allowed for better competition and better competition and like less of a skill gap, because like there's always the issue from like say you're like a main team trying to break into advanced. There's always like a low advanced team will almost always have the capability of like winning like the division below them nowadays, at least.
Right.
And again, like a low invite team would almost always have like the capability of winning division under them. like easily, and there's always like that skill gap that exists, and I feel like Div 1 and Div 2 kind of help transition people easier, like how like main or like open IM and main did that earlier, you know.
Right. Okay. So, do you feel like your perspective on just like sort of RGL in the community, maybe like distances you from a lot of people? Like, is it something that kind of isolates you within the community, like just not going along with the hive mind mentality, so to speak, but then also not entirely agreeing with RGL? Like, has that impacted you socially or not really?
Not really. Like, I don't really go out of my way to really talk about this kind of stuff with other people. I don't really talk to other people other than like the friends I've already really made, to be honest.
Right. Okay.
That's because some like most of the times I do get the opportunity to like meet people like in pugs and stuff. I just don't like their vibe at all. Like they're kind of just not really fun to be around, at least when I'm playing. So that just makes me not want to hang out with them.
Right. Okay. So it's like it's not really something that you think you missed out on anyways. Like you wouldn't want to interact with them to begin with.
Yeah.
I respect it. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, what was the initial ESC to RGL transition like? What were some of like the early decisive things that like set the vibe, right?
Honestly, like the only thing that RGO really had over all the other things was that it was confirmed and it was like established already, and it promised a prize pool, which a lot of again Froyo decided or Banny decided team with a like league with a prize pool is the best for growth, and people went to the league that Froyo went to just because higher competition there.
Okay. Have there been any RGL decisions you really like disagree with? Like, I guess like the Villa one would be an example, but then do you think there's one that's like even more representative of of any of RGL's issues, or that you just personally disagreed with a lot?
Some of the ban reasons have been really definitely during like the earlier RGL days. I think like LOL guy got like I think LOL guy got banned for like typing like season 3 he got banned for typing KYS to Banny in chat. Like and then they had to overturn that decision just like cuz people posted about it and they were like this is like literally just normal banter. Like why is this a bannable offense? Obviously like there was the whole age where like there was like the weekly RGL thing where it was like help I said a slur in chat and I got reported. Why am I banned now? I'm not really gonna talk about like if you're able to say it, but if it's just like a slur in general during a match or a scrim, just don't say it in an environment where you're not sure people are cool with it, you know.
Right. I know.
That's like my take on it.
My take is like there's just no benefit to it. So like, why should like why should somebody say it to begin with? You know, I don't know.
I mean, that's sometimes just how people just talk, and other times people just do it to be funny.
Damn, casual slurs really be like that. But fair enough. Yeah, it's just like when RGL makes decisions like that, like it really just doesn't do like help anyone. Like it leaves a really bad impression on the people, I'd imagine, right? Because it's just like it looks like they don't know what they're doing. It looks like they'll just like bend to pressure. But then it's like if they don't ban them, it's like yeah, they kind of ban them for like an unjust reason. So it's just like a lose-lose situation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like what I was getting at, where I feel like RGL has always kind of been disconnected from like the community's sense of right and wrong, you know.
I don't think it's even like I guess that is a part of it, but then it seems like they don't even have a sense of right and wrong for themselves if they're just willing to go back on it that easily. You know what I mean?
You could definitely say that. It's just they're yeah, I don't know. I just feel like there definitely have to be like some organization shuffles to like really optimize RGL the way it could be optimized, you know?
Right, like the people care, but there just isn't enough internal consistency, I don't think.
Yeah.
But do you think on the community's part that like just that sort of the hive mind mentality like they usually see on something like TFTV, do you think maybe it also like kind of just like doesn't help with the admins, like it pushes the people who do genuinely care away, kind of?
Definitely. And I think the example that I think of the most is Fine. You know, remember that person? They like
Not really.
they're actually like were a maker of Sunshine, and and they're also trying to make a map with a Banny called like CP Cardinal. If you remember that map,
Oh yes, I do. I've heard that name.
they basically just got bullied out of the community just for like being trans. I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me if I'm wrong, but that basically happened, and it's like we just lost like a super talented map creator because like Sunshine is like one of like probably one of my favorite maps to play.
Oh yeah,
you know,
it's my favorite Sixes one.
and also it's another example is like Gentleman John. Like back when that whole ban Pred and Daegu thread happened, and like there was like that huge people just like outing themselves as like not nice people, and Gentleman John said, "I'm not. This community isn't like worth me keeping like the resources that I've made up for these guys. Like you guys aren't worth it," and just took down a lot of community resources that he maintained.
Like what sort of resources?
I think there was like something like a map.tf where it was like, so that's like a map review tool where you could like switch between the points. I remember using that quite a bit whenever I was on teams. It's like gave you like different perspectives on like the certain points on the map.
Right.
There's also a fantasy TF2, which used to be fun to do whenever that used to exist. There's like it was like fantasy draft for lands or like seasons and stuff. Of like invite or like premiership and just stuff like that just went away just because people said some not really nice things to each other, you know?
Right. Looks like Gentleman John really was a gentleman, though. Couldn't stand it.
Yeah, you could say that.
A sad day. Okay. So it's like, yeah, we push away a lot of those really good resources due to our own personal predisposition, I guess.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate to hear. So are there any, like, really big concerns that you have about, like, the community or, like, as a whole at the moment, or, like, the state of the game? Just that sort of stuff?
Me personally, I just want, like... Obviously, like, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here, but, like, I feel like I just, like, want more nice people in the game. Maybe I'm just not looking in the right places, like... But I just feel like, there aren't really too many good-natured people in the game.
Right.
Up to, like, a certain point, you know? Like, I remember I was playing, like a Hobo League pug, like, by myself.
Hobo League?
Yeah, I, like, was playing that pug group for, like, once by myself, and the resulting pug was, like, probably the most toxic pug environment I had ever been in like, all my years of playing TF2, you know? Like, literally, like, everyone on my team was, like, shit-talking each other, except for me, and shit-talking, like, everyone in, like, on the other team.
Oh god.
Like, it wasn't even really, like, a funny, haha, we are actually friends shit-talk. It was, like, I fucking hate you so much shit-talk. Like, there was genuine malice.
Wow. I don't know, like, I guess to an extent, yeah, it's like preaching to the choir, but then it's like, I guess kind of going along with just like the goal of this sort of series, it's just like, I feel like it's really important for people to just sort of like share that perspective and get on the same page about things, and just talk about those sorts of things together, even if it is a bit like preach to the choir-y.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. Now, I just feel like it's kind of just hard to really find people who I like talking to at the very least, just because they're definitely, I think a big issue with like the community consensus is like you get all these like teenagers and stuff trying to get into the game, and they see how some top level players act. You I'm talking about like Banny and stuff. Like they see like Banny getting mad and pugs and stuff and yelling at his team and stuff and getting and having like a huge ego, and that influences them to start thinking that behavior is like okay, and it's because like, well, this guy's doing it at the top, so I guess I can do it. Like in their own minds. Like honestly, I used to be that way, kind of. Like whenever I was like a teenager playing this game, I was like, oh, like definitely had an ego, you know. And
Yeah.
I would definitely get like mad and yell a lot. I do still yell sometimes, but definitely not as much as I used to.
Reformed.
Yeah, I'd say I'm reformed, but honestly, it's like I just feel like the fact that people do that in the community and like these kids end up like replicating that to a certain extent just to adds to the status quo of the community like environment, you know.
Right, right.
And they're definitely like examples of like, I'm not gonna name any names, but they're definitely examples of like people who are like normal teenagers just trying to play the game who turn to like absolute degenerates because he got in with the wrong friend group, you know.
Yeah. I feel like there's like a lot of people that do care and could just kind of be inspired, but that they never really find the opportunity to like try and change things or like want to change things themselves. Like they aren't really ever given the voice to, I guess.
It's something that you really, for me, it was like I definitely just noticed it a lot whenever it sounds funny, but like as soon as I started interacting with people outside the game more, just because of like COVID and stuff, like it's kind of lessening the restrictions. I found out like how not okay some behaviors just straight up are, you know.
Right, right.
And honestly, I definitely used to be like a big slur user. Just honestly, like at least like in voice comms with like my friends and stuff. Not really like saying it to other people, but as like whenever I started just talking to like more people outside of like that clique, it was just like, wow, this stuff that I'm doing is just not okay.
But then it's like you look at the TF2 community, you try and like say anything about that, like make a TFTV post, and it's just like people are like it's not that serious, right? Like, and you're the one who seems unreasonable.
Yeah, it's definitely like the hive-minded full effect there, I'd say.
For sure.
Probably like my least favorite people are like the people who like really egregious online, and then the people who act normal, like who are completely normal people offline.
Right. And they're like,
Because it mostly just implies that like they just think that that shit's okay to do only online, and they know that what they're doing is like wouldn't be acceptable and like offline. But they still choose to do it online.
right, and it's like they try and excuse it as like, oh, I only do it because it's online. Yeah, like I'm normal in person, but then it's like it doesn't matter because it's online. But then it's like you're still the person doing those things. Like it doesn't matter whether it's in person or online, right?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess there are some definite troglodytes in the community, unfortunately, and I don't really think that's gonna change just because for that to change, I'd like the internet itself would have to have a massive like reform in how people are treating stuff.
Right.
And obviously, there are like some things that are like genuinely funny. I'm more talking about like the super like malice-ridden things. Like people joke about like the Modern Warfare 2 lobbies and stuff. Like that was like a meme, really. But I'm more talking about like the genuinely malicious things that people do to each other online. You know?
Right, for sure. Yeah. Alright, I definitely feel like that's fair, yeah, especially when it's like just kind of takes like a community precedence and becomes normalized, yeah. Really just doesn't help anybody, not even yourself.
I will say that like RGL has had a good impact in that regard, where it's like you definitely don't see a lot of people trying to do stuff like that. You
Right.
know? Like I think one of the dumbest examples I've ever seen of stuff like this happening was think it was like Sin 6 Gaming in like season 22 or 23. I don't remember what they're getting. I think they're getting sponsored by an org like that whole team, and they were playing Invite, and one of their teammates decided to say like the funny hard R word, and they should have just lost their team to sponsorship, and completely removed that org from like even being interested in sponsoring TF2 ever again.
Damn.
And it's like, I just feel like people, they're young, don't really think that their actions really have consequences, but stuff like that kind of just doesn't add up.
Right, it's just like, it's not always going to be super obvious to you up front.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, because it reflects on like everybody else, yeah, not just you. You all have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And has that been consistent through like all the time you think you've like played TF2, just like the community, like those sorts of social standards as a whole, or is that something that's like gone better or worse with time?
I really say it's gotten better just because of the fact that RGL has been really, like, eventually they decided, like, the whole N-word stuff, the whole spiel, eventually people has decided to, like, not say those slurs and stuff, and honestly it's been like, it's sort of been kind of slowly being outed out of the community. You see a lot less people like saying those words, at least like in the public eye.
Right.
So it's like definitely contributing to like a more positive environment, you know?
Yeah. RGL, like, they're definitely trying, they definitely care, it's just like, sometimes they go about it in the wrong way, yeah.
Yeah.
But it is kind of nice to see. Yeah. So, something that I did kind of want to talk about, touch upon is, how do people respond to like drama with ESEA compared to RGL?
Honestly, I don't really, like I said, I wasn't really like around for like the prime ESEA open happening thread type stuff, you know?
Right, that's fair. But like, was there anything you noticed like without being as involved in the threads?
There are definitely just not that intelligent people making posts, you know? But that's always been a thing. So I don't really think it's really necessarily changed. Probably less volume of people making those posts just because of like, there's probably been like I said, like drama threads haven't really like been too big of a thing. I haven't really seen like an actual drama thread like recently, you know?
Right.
Like, I think there used to be like a good drama and like at least the once every like happenings thread, but like I haven't really seen any. There hasn't really been any like good recent drama. Like I want to say good, it's like any drama worth mentioning.
Right. It's just like the average drama, nothing special.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the times that I actually remember actual drama happening was like the season 3 Plump Wench drama and the Young Sanity drama that just recently happened. That's basically all that I can remember personally.
I see, that's not bad.
Whereas like how people make it out to be the open happenings thread, it happened a lot more. It happened a lot more frequently. They made it seem.
Yeah. Okay. So, what's the Six's player culture like? What are their mentalities like? How does it sort of differ for something like Highlander or casual?
I mean, I can't really say just because I've never really been in a Highlander environment for an extended period of time, other than like a meme, you know.
Right. Okay.
It's like I've never really interacted with. I assume it's kind of like same old, just in a different form. But like with casual, it's like I definitely say there's a big disparity between like how most casual people play the game and how like Sixes players play and stuff. some Sixes players, they enjoy pub stomping. Some people just like enjoy trolling in pubs. Whereas like sometimes sometimes some poor person who just got off of work, had a rough day at work, and just plays the game casually and just logs on to see like just logs on to see like Jay Hyunpei terrorizing Oprah pubs and just destroying his team.
Right. Okay.
Like I don't think it's bad to be a casual player. Like I can't really I really only play this game like competitively for the most part. I don't really partake in like casual stuff that much, to be honest.
That's
But
fair.
like I can definitely like look at other games and be like the same way, where it's like I only play this game really casually. I'm not really trying to be the best at it. I'm just trying to play the game with like
The very
my friends or
best.
something, you know.
Right. Okay. Let's see. So for something like Highlander, like for some of the classes, you'd see like a very big sense of like a sub community, kind of like like just based off of class. Is that something you'd see in Sixes at all, as something like Soldier with either like roamers or pockets, or is it not really that like collaborative per se?
Um, I definitely would say it's not really that collaborative. You know, like I don't think there's like a pocket community around for like pocket soldiers. If there is, then I just haven't been invited to it. But
How
like
about roamer?
I don't think that there's really like a community per se. I think like the most community thing that happened was like I think Drac, like the EU roamer, like for 7 previously posted like made a Twitter post where it's like I'm in, they're looking at me, I'm dead, and Blaze retweeted that since that's basically like roamer. I think that's like the most sense of community we've ever had between classes, to be
Damn.
honest.
Alright.
Like I don't really observe it too much personally. And I think maybe there's like a medic community, but like I don't know.
Alright.
I don't really see it with combats too much.
Definitely fair, yeah. Just something I'd personally be interested in hearing about, like, yeah. So what are Sixes pugs like? Highlander pugs are just some of the most rancid things a lot of the time. Are Sixes the same? Like, what's it like?
Definitely. And I was actually talking with Emily, if you know who that person is.
Like Emmy on Somebody Help?
Yeah, that one.
Ah, yes.
Like we're basically just talking in like the team Discord since they're playing on my team right now.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
I was talking about how I didn't really enjoy pugging with like most of the people who play pugs nowadays, and how it's like basically like the same 20 people who pug, and I only really like talking to about like 5 or 6 of them. And Emmy said it was like basically the same thing in Highlander, so
Yep.
yeah. Pugging just isn't really in a good state in terms of TF2.
No, I'm afraid not. Do you have a like favorite pug group? If so, like what kind of set them apart?
Um, I never really played pugs enough to really have a favorite pug group. You know,
Right. What would you say the favorite, like the best day of pugging was then? Like what age, kind of?
probably just pug champ. Cause like the thing like I guarantee you why most of like the not fun pugs happen in Sixes is just cause like some guy gets randomed onto medic that doesn't really know how to play medic that well, and then like you have like a team trying to coach him how to play medic mid game. And it's basically both teams are just trying to do that. Whereas like Pug Champ is like if you added up to medic, you were like added like you had the mantle responsibility there. Like you chose to do that, so expected that like you're gonna be like good, you know.
Right. Okay. And then are there any sort of like community initiatives, projects, groups that you find interesting on regarding sixes?
Probably the most interesting project yet is like probably the Tf2 Coaching Central. Honestly, I only really found about it recently.
What's that?
It's basically like it's like newbie mixes a bit, but like it's like a classroom environment. Not only like classroom environment, but like basically like these people who are like coaches and stuff just like can decide to like hold sessions about like demo reviews and stuff related to like their class or anything else, or like decide to just randomly teach like, oh, how do you push out of like process last or something like that, you know? And I honestly like it a lot better than newbie mixes, where it's like, no offense to Rogue, but I really don't really. Newbie mixes takes a lot more energy out of me than simply just like loading up one of my demos and like demo reviewing myself in front of like other people.
Right,
You
like
know?
it's a lot more commitment, kind of like responsibility on paper.
Yeah, like I think that this is another thing where it's like I don't think this something like this existed back in ESEA, which is really good. I think it only really came around in like the past 2 years or 1 year, I guess.
Right. Okay.
And that's good. I think back then you already had newbie mixes, and newbie mixes still operates on the whole Friday night stuff just out of like convenience. Whereas like here, you basically just get to hold as many sessions as basically you want. You know,
Right, like
a lot more flexible of a schedule.
Sounds much more personal and involved as well,
Yeah.
catering to the individual's needs. Okay. And how's that been going along?
So far I've only really held one session. I do want to hold more in the future, but like I think that the one session I did hold was like insightful for the people that ended up having to sit in on it.
Okay. I think that about runs off the list of things I'd personally want to ask, or that I have in mind off the top of my head. Do you have any things you want to like ask and answer about yourself, or just things you generally want to discuss for a bit?
Not that I can really think of.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not as good at just like free flowing it for like a massive amount of time for 6v6, unfortunately. I'm like a lot more focused around just like Highlander and more community things.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Shall I go ahead and oh, actually, do you have anybody you want to like shout out, like any former current staff members or interesting community members, or like just teammates in general, like any people you want to shout out? Yeah.
Alright, let me pull up the friends list here because I have a lot of them.
Name all of them.
Shout out to 5YT Soint. Shout out to Champosaurus Rex. Shout out to Nerfu. Shout out to Jamond, Gwendolyn, Rico, Officer Reeks, managing that Twitch channel, or like not Twitch channel, YouTube channel. Shout out to Dunker, Asian, Korean, Zebra, Delta Market, Fancyson, Champosaurus Rex, Grape Juice. Just a lot of names here. Shout out to like everyone that has had a positive impact on me, on like me playing the game and stuff, and people who I genuinely enjoyed talking to and stuff, and also people who like helped me out back when I was still trying to get where I am now. You know, shout out to like Rio, Reflecto, like people like that.
To the decent people in the community.
Yeah.
Alright.
Like,
for the boys.
Yeah, just for the boys, you know.
Okay. I think I will go and end the recording then, yeah?
Alright.